Thanks very much. Joining me now, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democratic Congressman Mike of Illinois. Congressman, thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Congressman, of course, you serve on the House Intelligence Committee. You've been briefed multiple times on Russian interference in the 2016 election. You hear President Trump today once again cast doubt on the assessment that Russia was behind the election meddling. I wonder, and you, of course, sit on your committee with Republican colleagues. Do you or your Republican colleagues have any doubts that Russia, and Putin specifically, directed these attacks?
I have no one I'm aware of that has any doubts that Russia directed the attacks. I believe it's unanimous among the intelligence community. I don't know of any Republicans on the committee that doubt this. I mean, they may exist, but I certainly haven't heard from them. The problem with this is manifold. First, he has an opportunity this week to tell President Putin, you did this and it won't be tolerated. If he doesn't do that, it sends a message to, I think, Mr. Putin that there's a green light to continue this. We just had Trey Johnson talk to us about how we have to harden our defenses against future attacks on our democratic system. If the commander-in-chief isn't willing to acknowledge the threat and where it came from, it makes those defenses so much harder.
And make clear to our viewers, because we've had discussions about this before, in fact, there is evidence that Russian-based hackers continue to probe U.S. election systems, political parties, etc. Perhaps, is it your concern that they are setting up for further attacks against U.S. elections in 2018 and 2020?
You know, if anything, what 16 could have been was a foray into the system to see exactly what they could do, maybe just to discredit the process. What concerns me is that they learned something. We have to remember one of the last things Director Comey said before he was fired was, they'll be back.
No question. And possibly that he said attacking Republicans and Democrats. CNN's confirmed, looking ahead to tomorrow's meeting between Trump and Putin, which you mentioned, it'll be a very small group in the room, limited to President Trump, Secretary of State Tillerson, along with translators as well. Considering, at least in the past, the warm relationship you've seen between both Trump and Tillerson and Putin, does it concern you that that's the small group that's in there? There aren't, for instance, career Foreign Service diplomats in the room as well.
You know, it concerns me, but it doesn't matter how many people are in the room as much as it matters that the right things are said. Reaffirming NATO and Article 5, talking about Russian hacking and the fact that we're not going to tolerate it, trying to get on the same page about Syria and dealing with ISIS, telling Putin he should stop trading with North Korea, letting him know that, hey, we're there in the G20, we're going to begin a multinational effort to sanction North Korea. And if there are countries that don't participate, the rest of the world will sanction them as well, or keep them out of their trade agreements.
We should note that President Trump did say in a speech today that Russia must stop its, quote, destabilizing activities in Ukraine, as well as its support for hostile regimes. So quite strong words from the president regarding Russian activity in Ukraine and elsewhere. A valuable message, important message in your view?
Absolutely. I would have helped a great deal if he would have added that sanctions will be maintained and perhaps increased if Russia isn't willing to cooperate. As you acknowledge, he talks about other places. You know, Eastern Europe is constantly a threat. I was literally in Georgia with a congressional delegation as we were watching evidence of the Russians moving the border in the middle of the night. So there's clearly a need for action by the commander-in-chief. He, I think, can have as strong an influence on Putin as anyone in the world. He has the opportunity this week.
The House Intelligence Committee's investigation of both Russian meddling and other Russia-related issues continues. Your committee has begun to interview witnesses. It's been collecting and reviewing an enormous number of documents. I know that much of this is classified. I just want to ask you this. As you continue to probe, what are you learning? Are you learning more? And are you finding things that encourage you to continue this investigation?
I think if any American, Democrat or Republican, had read what we had read, heard what we had heard, you want us to go full throttle. This could very easily could have been attacks on Republicans in a previous decade or in a future decade. The democratic process matters to everyone. You know, we're going to take our time, follow the facts wherever they take us. We all have a responsibility to do this on a bipartisan basis. The American public has a right to know. Our very democratic process was attacked, it was threatened. That will continue unless we find out exactly what happened and how to prevent it.
We're going to have the opportunity in a short time to speak with the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, shortly, but we also will be coming back with Congressman Mike Quigley just after this break with much more to discuss, including